Are you tired of starting strong and falling short again? You tell yourself this is the year, the month, the Monday. You promise to wake up earlier, eat better, and focus more. But 3 days later, you're scrolling again. The workout skipped, the notebook's empty, and the fire? Gone. Here's the truth no one tells you. Discipline isn't motivation. It's muscle. You don't wait for it, you train it. And the Stoics knew this long before self-help books and morning routines became trends. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Yet every morning he reminded himself, today I'll meet selfish men, liars, the arrogant. He didn't seek comfort, he expected resistance. And through it, he ruled, with reason, focus, and unshakable control. So today, you and I are going to reclaim that power. We're going to train your brain for maximum discipline, using timeless Stoic principles built for men who are ready to take control. It's not too late. In fact, it's exactly the right time. We'll cover 8 battle-tested strategies to develop self-control, crush procrastination, and become the man who follows through, with or without motivation. So if you're ready to stop negotiating with your comfort zone, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with a man who needs it. Because this is the beginning of your return to power. Let's begin. 1. Know your inner commander. You don't need more hacks, motivation quotes, or dopamine detoxes. You need a command. Not over others, but over yourself. And that begins by facing a hard truth. Most men today have never been trained to lead their own minds. They react, they scroll, they obey whatever voice shouts the loudest in the moment. Urge, laziness, frustration. That voice wins because no one ever taught them how to choose who should be in charge when the storm comes. Discipline isn't about doing hard things when you feel inspired. It's about doing them when you feel nothing at all. That's what separates men who drift from men who dominate. Stoic discipline begins where comfort ends, and the first battlefield is inside your head. The Stoics didn't wait for clarity. They built it. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning to remind himself that the world would not be kind, people would fail him, and his emotions would rebel. But he didn't write that to complain. He wrote it to prepare. He understood what most men today avoid, that your internal commander must be trained daily, or he will surrender to the enemy within, your impulses. Now imagine your brain as a war room. 2 generals sit across from each other. One is your emotion, fueled by habits, distractions, and excuses. The other is your reason, silent but firm, holding the long-term vision. The problem? Most men only listen to the first one because he yells, he tempts, he convinces you to trade progress for pleasure. The Stoics, however, trained their reason to speak louder, not with noise, but with consistency. And that's your next move. Every time you're faced with a decision, whether to hit snooze, eat junk, or skip work, you are not choosing a task. You are electing your commander. Will it be emotion or will it be reason? This is not a metaphor. It's the mechanism by which discipline is built or broken. And the more you default to feelings, the more you hand your life over to a leader you cannot trust. That's why Stoics practiced conscious awareness. Not in a poetic, philosophical sense, but in the brutal reality of battle. Am I reacting or responding? Is this action governed by purpose or pleasure? Who's in command? My mission or my mood? Those questions don't sound fancy, but they save lives. They save careers. They save mornings from becoming months of regret. Start today. Write down the last 3 decisions you made out of impulse. Label each with the truth. Did emotion win or did reason take command? Then go deeper. Picture the moment. Where were you? What were you feeling? And what did you choose instead of what you should have? That clarity is not guilt. It's data, and it's training. You are forging a new commander, one decision at a time. And if you do this every day, reason will stop whispering. It will start commanding, just like it did for the Stoics. Just like it will for you. 2. Build the unbreakable morning. No one loses the war at midnight. They lose it at 6 a.m., before the first word is spoken, before the coffee brews, before anyone is watching. Because by the time most men open their eyes, they've already surrendered. They reach for the phone, they scroll, they delay, they let comfort decide how the day begins. And when the morning collapses, so does everything else. Focus, intention, strength, even self-respect. Discipline isn't built in public. It's built in those silent moments when no one's around to clap. And that's exactly why the Stoics treated the morning not as a routine, but as a battle position. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, didn't just wake up to lead an empire. He woke up to lead himself first. He reminded himself that even as the most powerful man in the world, he would be tempted by comfort, laziness, and distraction. His weapon? Preparation. A Stoic morning doesn't begin with your alarm. It begins the night before, when you decide that waking up means showing up. It means you've already chosen clarity over chaos. You don't let the world dictate your mindset. You set it. While most men wait for energy, the disciplined man moves before it arrives. He doesn't chase motivation, he creates momentum. The morning becomes sacred ground where his identity is forged, again and again, day after day. Think of your morning as a training ground. The body is groggy, the mind resists, and yet you rise. Not because you feel like it, but because you said you would. That's the core of discipline. It's not energy, it's execution. The Stoics knew that mornings are the gatekeepers of character. That's why journaling, silence, reflection, and physical movement weren't luxuries, they were armor. 5 minutes of preparation can mean 5 hours of power. And 5 hours of power? That becomes a life of control. The modern world sells you noise, scroll feeds, breaking news, instant messages. But a disciplined man reclaims silence. He wakes up and begins with control. He writes down what he must face, what he will resist, and what he must do regardless of how he feels. He doesn't gamble on the day on luck. He starts with a blueprint, and then he builds it, hour by hour, brick by brick. So here's your action. Choose your wake-up time and make it law. Not a suggestion, a command. When the alarm rings, you rise, you breathe, you write down the one thing you must conquer that day. You remind yourself what Marcus knew. You weren't made to lie under warm blankets. You were made to act, then move, walk, stretch, cold shower, do anything that turns resistance into rhythm. That's how mornings stop being wasted time and start becoming your battlefield. Quiet, brutal, sacred, win it, and the rest follows. 3. The art of saying no. The strongest men aren't the ones who do everything. They're the ones who refuse what doesn't serve them. In a world drowning in noise, offers, and distractions, real strength isn't about more. It's about less. The man who has discipline doesn't ask what he can add to his day. He asks what he must eliminate. Because saying yes is easy. Everyone says yes. But saying no, firm, final, intentional, that's the mark of a trained mind. Comfort is seductive. It whispers at every corner. One more scroll, one more snack, one more excuse. And without realizing it, you trade your time, your focus, your fire for nothing. That trade doesn't happen once. It happens daily. Hundreds of tiny, quiet compromises that rob you of momentum. And the worst part, you don't feel it until it's too late, until the week's gone. The energy's drained, the mirror doesn't lie, and the man staring back feels further from who he said he'd become. The Stoics understood the trap of comfort. They didn't trust indulgence, not because they feared pleasure, but because they feared what it would do to their discipline. Seneca didn't preach minimalism to look virtuous. He practiced it to stay sharp, to stay dangerous, to stay awake. He trained his will by denying it what it didn't need. He knew every no made the next one easier. Every rejection of ease made him stronger than the man who surrendered to it. This is where most men fail. They think discipline means willpower, the ability to resist in the moment. But that's flawed. Stoic discipline begins long before the temptation arrives. It starts by redesigning your environment, removing the enemy before he shows up. If junk food is in the kitchen, you will eat it. If your phone is next to your bed, you will check it. That's not weakness, that's wiring. And if you know how your brain works, you don't fight it with force. You outmaneuver it with strategy. So here's your strategy. Look at your space, your desk, your fridge, your phone. What's there that keeps calling your name? Remove it. Not tomorrow, today. Discipline is preparation. Then look at your calendar. Where are you wasting time? What meetings, apps, or habits bleed your energy with no return? Cancel. Delete. Say no without apology. Because every yes you give to something meaningless is a no you give to the man you're building. And when you feel that pull, the urge to cave, to justify, to negotiate with your old self, pause. Ask the Stoic question. Is this essential? Will this action make me sharper, calmer, stronger? Or will it make me softer, slower, more distracted? That one question separates the disciplined from the desperate. And the man who asks it daily won't need motivation. He'll move with clarity. He'll say no, not because it's hard, but because it's who he is. 4. Master the hour, not the day. The clock is not your enemy, it's your battlefield. But most men wake up and hand over their weapons before the first hour even starts. They stare at a to-do list 10 tasks long, let anxiety sneak in through the cracks, and waste precious minutes trying to win the day. That's the first mistake. Trying to conquer 24 hours at once. No general charges on every front. He secures one zone at a time. Stoic discipline follows the same rule. Master the moment, not the entire map. The world screams for multitasking. Apps beg for attention. Notifications fight for your eyes. And before you even start, you're fractured. What began as a focus ends in fragments. But a Stoic doesn't chase everything. He narrows his vision. He knows the only place discipline exists is now. Not next week, not tomorrow. This hour, this task, this choice, that's the only battlefield he can win. Marcus Aurelius didn't try to solve everything at once. He returned again and again to the present. In Meditations, he wrote of narrowing the field, of doing only what's necessary, doing it well, and not getting pulled into 1,000 scattered concerns. That wasn't ancient poetry. That was a battle plan, and it's more urgent now than ever. Discipline doesn't come from hustle. It comes from direction. It's not about moving more, but moving better. That's why we don't build disciplined lives through chaos. We build them through blocks, time blocks, deep work, uninterrupted flow. You don't need 10 hours, you need one that counts. 1 hour where your phone is off, your focus is absolute, and your mind becomes a weapon again. Then repeat it, hour by hour. That's how empires are built. Quietly, precisely, relentlessly. The mistake men make is believing focus is about personality. It's not. It's practice. You don't have focus. You generate it. Like a Stoic forger pounding steel into a blade, you shape it daily. You protect it like territory, sharpen it like instinct. You don't let outside noise breach your gates, and when it does, you don't complain. You return. That's what separates men who drift from those who dominate. They know how to return, again and again. Here's your drill. Take tomorrow's calendar and carve out one power block, 60 minutes. Label it Fortress Hour. No distractions, no passive work, just one mission. Write, plan, train, build, whatever moves the needle. Treat that hour as non-negotiable. Protect it like your life depends on it, because your future does. And when you complete it, don't reward yourself with a scroll or a snack. Reward yourself with another round. Reset, breathe, re-enter. It's not sexy, it's not flashy, but it's pure. And if you do this every day, 1 hour becomes 2, then 3, and suddenly you don't need more time. You need fewer leaks. The Stoic doesn't fear the chaos of life because he doesn't live in the chaos, he lives in the now, and that's where discipline breathes. Not in the future, not in fantasy, but in this hour, right here, right now. Win it, then win the next. 5. Build a fortress of habits. A disciplined man doesn't wake up and hope to be consistent. He engineers it, not by chasing motivation, but by laying bricks, daily. Habit is his fortress, and each action, no matter how small, is a stone in the wall. The modern world celebrates big wins, overnight change, and sudden transformation. But that's fantasy. The Stoic builds slowly, with force and repetition. He understands that excellence doesn't appear, it is repeated. It becomes muscle memory, not a miracle. Most men fail not because they lack strength, but because they rely on willpower. Willpower fades, habits don't. Willpower gets tired, habits automate. That's the difference between the man who shows up once a week and the one who shows up regardless of weather, mood, or excuses. The first depends on how he feels, the second depends on who he's become. And that identity is forged through small, specific, deliberate repetition. Aristotle, who shaped Stoic logic, wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." That wasn't philosophy, that was engineering. It means your results don't come from random bursts of effort, they come from rituals. And Stoics knew that without structure, emotion wins. That's why their daily rhythm was sacred: morning journaling, physical training, evening reflection. Not glamorous, not loud, but unbreakable. Picture a blacksmith at dawn. The fire is cold. The metal is hard. He doesn't wait to feel inspired, he works. Each hammer strike is a habit, and as the blade forms, so does he. That's how discipline works. It doesn't ask how you feel, it shapes who you are. And it starts with what you do on repeat. One push-up, one cold shower, one journal page. When stacked daily, these become your identity. But here's the trap. Most men try to overhaul everything at once. They try to eat clean, train like a Marine, meditate like a monk, and sleep like a baby, all on Monday. By Friday, they've quit. Not because they're weak, but because they skipped the forge. They forgot that consistency doesn't start with intensity. It starts with simplicity. That's where the Stoic wins. He doesn't set out to become perfect overnight. He commits to becoming unbreakable over time. Start with 3 non-negotiables. First, journal every night, even 1 sentence. Reflect. Write what you did right, what you missed, and what you'll adjust. Second, move daily. It could be a 5-minute walk, 20 push-ups, or a hard gym session, but never skip. Third, embrace discomfort once a day. Choose something small but difficult. Skip sugar. Turn off screens. Take a cold shower. These acts don't just build resistance, they remind you that you're not owned by comfort. You command it. Over time, these habits fuse into your frame. You no longer try to be disciplined. You are disciplined. Because you've built the system that makes it automatic. This is how Stoics became immovable. They didn't just think with reason, they moved with rhythm. So build your fortress, brick by brick, morning by morning, action by action, until the man you were becomes the man you command. 6. Pain is the path. Most men run from pain. The Stoic runs into it, not because he's a masochist, but because he knows pain is the door to power. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the arena. Every man says he wants discipline, clarity, and self-mastery, but when life applies pressure, they fold. Because they trained for comfort, not chaos. And a soft body trained in softness will never hold up under weight. Stoicism flips that equation. It doesn't ask, how can I avoid pain? It asks, how can I face it before it faces me? Modern life offers escape routes at every turn, dopamine on demand, comfort at a click, distractions wrapped in convenience. And most men take the deal. They chase what's easy, smooth, and predictable. But that deal comes at a price. The death of resilience. The Stoics knew this. That's why they practiced voluntary discomfort. They didn't wait for the storm to test their will. They built the storm into their schedule. Because discomfort reveals the truth. Who's in charge when things don't go your way? Marcus Aurelius didn't fantasize about comfort. He wrote about death, betrayal, loss, failure, because he trained for it. He called it premeditatio malorum, rehearsing adversity before it arrives. This wasn't a worry. This was mental armor. It's the difference between being shocked by pain and being shaped by it. When you expect resistance, you stop flinching. You start leaning in. You sharpen your blade in advance. Pain is not a punishment, it's a forge. The man who embraces it voluntarily gains power over it. Cold showers, hard workouts, difficult conversations, boring tasks, fasting, silence. Every discomfort faced with awareness becomes fuel. The man who chooses the hard road on purpose becomes immune to the one forced on him. That's what most men miss. They avoid temporary pain, then crumble under real weight. The Stoic does the opposite. He lifts heavy when it's optional, so he doesn't collapse when it's not. And this doesn't require extreme measures. You don't need to hike through snow or sleep on stone. You start where you are. Wake up early and don't complain. Delay the snack. Take the stairs. Turn off your phone and sit in stillness. Discipline isn't born in fire. It's born in friction. The little acts of will that push you past your threshold without breaking you. 1 inch past comfort, every day. That's how men grow roots. You don't build strength by thinking about adversity. You build it by touching it, training it, walking into it. And when it arrives, and it will, you won't panic. You'll nod. You'll smile. You'll act. Because you've been here before. You've trained in the dark. You've bled on purpose. And now, you don't fear the hit. You welcome it. Because while most men break under pressure, you've made pain your path. And that makes you unshakable. 7. Track like a Roman general. A soldier who marches blind walks into traps. A man who doesn't track his behavior becomes a stranger to his own mind. You can't master what you don't measure. And most men fail not because they lack discipline, but because they lack awareness. They drift. They repeat the same mistakes, live the same weeks, and wonder why nothing changes. But the Stoics didn't drift. They examined, they audited, they wrote. Because clarity isn't found, it's recorded, it's earned. In a world obsessed with output, reflection is rebellion. Most men skip it. They move fast, react fast, and collapse fast. But the disciplined man stops, not to stall, but to study. He collects data on himself like a general preparing for battle. He asks, Where did I falter? What pulled me off course? What must be reinforced? That habit of review is more than feedback. It's fuel. It sharpens awareness, exposes weakness, and forges precision. The Stoics didn't write to feel better. They wrote to see better. Seneca reflected nightly, not to confess sins, but to reinforce alignment. He reviewed his actions like a strategist. Epictetus taught that we must guard our minds like we guard our doors. You don't just let anything in. You assess. You defend. That begins with observation, not judgment. Observation. And when you observe often enough, patterns appear. You see the traps before they trip you. You gain back control, not in theory, but in daily practice. Discipline requires a scorecard. You're not playing for applause, you're playing for internal mastery, and mastery requires structure. So build it. Your notebook is your war journal. Keep it simple. Every night, before sleep, write down 3 points. What did I do well today? Where did I lose control? What will I adjust tomorrow? That 5-minute ritual does more than any motivational video. It holds you to your own standard. It turns your actions into architecture. Think of it like sharpening a blade. The more consistent the grind, the cleaner the cut. Without journaling, you're dull. You forget your failures. Worse, you forget your wins. The man who forgets both repeats both, but the one who writes sees clearly. He doesn't just remember what happened, he understands why it happened, and that insight becomes leverage. He can cut the waste, he can double the discipline. Not based on hype, but on history. Most men fear this process because it holds up a mirror. But you can't fix what you won't face. That's why Stoics were warriors of self-knowledge. They didn't chase identity, they built it by reviewing their actions relentlessly. That's how you move from reactive to intentional, from sloppy to sharp, from undisciplined to unshakable. Tonight, don't just go to bed. Deconstruct the day, pull it apart, track your moves like a general reading the map after a battle. Then write your new orders. Not in theory, in action. 1 page at a time, one truth at a time. That's how men don't just stay disciplined, they become unstoppable. 8. Become the rock in the storm. You don't become disciplined by reacting less. You become disciplined by becoming immovable. There's a difference. Most men try to be calmer, less distracted, more in control, but they stay reactive. They brace for life's punches, hoping not to fall. But the Stoic doesn't flinch, he doesn't brace, he stands. Because he knows the world doesn't owe him calm. It offers chaos. And the man who expects storms doesn't panic when they hit. He becomes the rock, still, grounded, obeyed by no emotion. Discipline is not a streak, it's not a mood, it's not a short burst of motivation, it's identity. And that identity is built the moment you stop asking how to be disciplined and start declaring I am. That shift sounds small, but it changes everything. Because actions follow identity. If you still want to be disciplined, then every morning you're negotiating. But if you are disciplined, then your actions are just proof. You're not hoping to behave a certain way, you're returning to who you already are. The Stoics lived by this code. Marcus Aurelius didn't write to become a better man. He wrote to stay aligned with the man he already was. His journal wasn't a wish list, it was a command center. His tone wasn't soft, it was military. You were born to act, not to lie under warm blankets. He didn't ask permission from the world to be disciplined. He reminded himself it was already his duty. And duty doesn't depend on how you feel. You can train your brain all you want, but if you still view discipline as something you try to maintain, you'll keep losing it. Because storms don't wait for your energy levels. Life won't ask if you slept well or if you're feeling inspired. It will attack. And in those moments, your habits matter. Your planning matters. But above all, your identity matters. The man who says, "This is who I am," doesn't fold under pressure. He acts in alignment with his standard, every time. So from now on, you stop framing discipline as effort, and you start framing it as essence. You're not building it like a house. You're wearing it like a name. When you wake up, don't ask what you feel like doing. Ask who you are, and answer it without stutter. I am the man who does the work. I am the man who honors his word. I am the rock. The final step is simple but powerful. Each morning, read one Stoic quote aloud. Look at yourself in the mirror. Then say, I am disciplined. Not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but because it's who I am. You're not chasing a result. You're stepping into command. That's what the Stoics did. That's what you do now. And from this point forward, you don't try to stay grounded. You are the ground. The world shakes, but you don't, because you've become the rock in the storm. Discipline is not a gift. It's not a switch you flip. It's a craft, a lifelong commitment. And like any craft, it demands repetition, awareness, and courage. What you've just heard isn't a theory, it's a way of life. The Stoics didn't wait for better circumstances. They trained their minds to stay steady, regardless of the storm. And so can you. We began by choosing your commander, emotion or reason. Then we built the morning, your launch pad. We practiced saying no to what weakens you. We mastered the hour instead of the day. We turned small actions into unbreakable habits. We stepped into discomfort on purpose to forge a real mental toughness. We tracked our patterns like Roman generals, not to judge, but to grow. And finally, we transformed discipline from something we chase into something we are. Now it's your turn. These aren't tips, they're weapons. Use them daily. Journal before bed. Guard your first hour in the morning. Remove one comfort. Face one fear. Track one decision. Win 1 hour. That's how you build momentum. That's how you reclaim control. Remember, the world will keep pulling at your attention. The noise won't stop, but your mind can grow stronger than the chaos. You can become the man who acts with intention, not impulse, with clarity, not confusion, with resolve, not regret. So if any part of this spoke to you, write it down. Reflect on it, practice it, and most of all, share your story in the comments below. What habit are you reclaiming today? What part of you are you forging again? Discipline isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming solid, grounded, real. One decision at a time. Begin again tomorrow, and the next. Until one day, you no longer try to be disciplined, you simply are.